This week, we're getting a little bit more tough love from Mel Robbins. As we head into the end of the year, which more importantly is the beginning of next year, I know that a lot of business owners start to think about goals for the year and maybe even New Year's resolutions, things like that. And I am not a fan of doing that just one time a year. I think that habit building is something that we should be doing all the time. But I saw this video of Mel's the other day. I think it's an older one, but it was so impactful. And so I wanted to watch it with you guys just real quick today and then talk about why this is so important. So let's give this a quick watch together right now. But before we do, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. All right, let's watch.
If you don't develop simply the ability to get up when you said you would, to eat what you said you would, to exercise because you said you would, to talk in a way to your kids that's patient because you said you would, you will never have the self-confidence to succeed in any environment. You won't.
Okay, I know that sounds really simple, but my experience personally and with clients and friends is that there is such an important character quality that is so severely lacking in our society. And it's not even a generational thing from what I could tell. I think I honestly don't know where it comes from, but it's exactly what Mel is touching on here. The reality is that we don't understand or really know how to properly do self discipline anymore. And that's what she's talking about here. She's literally saying, when you say you're going to do XYZ, whatever it is, whether it's something like getting up earlier in the morning so that you can actually do a morning routine, or maybe you're getting up, but you're not doing the routine, right? Maybe you're making excuses for yourself, or even worse, and this might be a hot take. You're probably going to come at me a little bit for this, but the idea of self-love or giving yourself grace, I'm not against it in concept, but I think it is very often overused and treated more as an excuse. Now, I am the queen of justifying why I'm not going to do something I said I was going to do, or why I am going to do something I said I wasn't going to do. But something that has shifted in me over the past few years as I've really been focusing on habit building and the concepts of atomic habits from James Clear. And then I later read The 1% Rule by Tommy Baker, both of them talking about a very specific concept, that idea of those tiny little improvements, not trying to attempt something so large that it becomes completely overwhelming and realistically somewhat impossible to do. And I think this has really helped me to build up my self-discipline. And here's the reality of things, my friends. If you are trying to grow a business, especially if you're doing it as a solopreneur, especially if you're doing it while being a full-time mom or having a full-time job, the absolute only way that you are going to succeed, the only chance you have, is exactly what Mel's talking about here. Doing the thing simply because you said you would. Now, I know we're all motivated by different things. There are people who are motivated by incentives. There are people who are motivated by competition. There are people who are motivated by a perceived punishment of some sort, consequences. But the reality is, until you find a way to be self-motivated, you're always going to struggle a little bit. Because if you're motivated by competition and somebody else is winning, is that going to discourage you, or is it going to encourage you? Or let's say you're motivated by competition and you are winning. Are you going to have a tendency to sit back on your laurels until somebody overtakes you? These are all things that are variables that are ultimately going to hurt your productivity and are going to hurt your business and prevent you from succeeding. So this is why I really wanted to talk about this specific video of Mel's and this concept of what I'm just calling "'cause you said you would." Realistically, you need to find a way to tap into that level of motivation in your life and in your business in order to create not only a business that is successful, but to find that work life balance inside of that business. Because part of "'cause you said you would" also includes things like rest and boundaries and taking space from your business so that you can live your life. We fall on all different sides of the spectrum on this one, guys, because there are those of us who give ourselves far too much grace and end up way too much on that life balance side and say, "You know what? I know I said I was going to" um, I don't know, it could be something big, like completely write a whole new sales funnel for your business, or it could be something smaller, which is one of those daily tasks like, "Hey, I'm gonna do my fresh pins for today." If you are giving yourself so much grace that you get completely behind in those things, you just don't do them, then your business is gonna go nowhere, right? You're gonna feel balanced, but that's because you're resting too much. Even within that work-life balance as a solopreneur, there should be a level of tiredness almost at the end of the day. Even if your business invigorates you, which I hope it does, it's still work. And if you're not feeling that work on some level, then my guess is that you're giving yourself too much grace. And I say all this like I'm talking to you, but honestly, I'm talking to myself just as much. This is something I've been working on for the last few years. And I have noticed that for myself that when I don't feel tiredness from a day of working on my business, then when I look back at that day, I tend to find that I wasn't very productive. And what that typically means is that I either let myself get distracted too much that day, and so I didn't get everything done, or maybe I just didn't put enough on my to-do list for the day. But there's another side of that too. You can be too much on the life balance side, but you can also be too much on the work balance side. And when that typically happens is when you are exhausted at the end of the day. Now, there may be certain days where you just get a little bit more worn out. So if it happens like on a one-off situation, I wouldn't consider it a problem yet. But if you feel that every single day that you work, then you're probably not creating enough space for rest for yourself, whether that just means like getting up a few times throughout the day and giving yourself breaks, or maybe you're putting too much on your to-do list for the day. There could be a lot of things there. But ultimately, I want to bring this back to what Mel said and this concept of self-motivation. I've known that this idea of motivation is challenging for a while because it has been for me. I see it for my clients. And so, one of the things that I built into the Tech Savvy Academy in order to try to help with that is I added in a little bit of gamification. I added in a point system where, as people complete courses, they get points and all this thing. And I gotta be real honest that even they don't know this yet. My students don't know this. I haven't told them. But I think I'm gonna take that out of the academy. Not because I no longer want to reward them for showing up for themselves and things like that. I still will. I'll find ways to do that. But I just think that by focusing so much on that gamification or trying to help them find their way to be motivated, I'm kind of stealing from them the reality of what worked for me, which was finding my self-motivation. Now, I am somewhat motivated by gamification. I'm somewhat motivated by accountability and by competition and even just the concept of checking something off my list. Like I have little bits of all of those motivation styles that work for me. And I've built some of that into my system for myself, my process. But ultimately, what has been working for me is finding that self motivation and creating non negotiables. When I say I'm going to do something, even if the only person I say it to is myself, I'm going to do it simply because I said I would. And that's where my habit building, my habit tracker, all of that have been used as tools to help me stay on track with that and build that muscle for myself, build that self motivation. And so that's why I'm going to actually be shifting things around in the academy. Shh, don't tell the students, but I'm going to be doing that because I think that it's absolutely necessary to find that within yourself in order to find that success and find that true balance. So I'm curious to hear from you. Have you been leaning too heavily on a particular style of motivation? Have you been giving yourself maybe a little too much grace, or have you been way too hard on yourself? And are all of these things what is causing you to feel out of balance in your business and maybe not as productive as you could be? I would love to hear what things you've been struggling with, but more importantly, what you're doing to help yourself push through that struggle. And if you're still finding yourself just like on that struggle bus and you don't really know how to get out of it by yourself, then I highly, highly recommend you consider looking at the Academy. In January, we're starting a whole new habit building aspect of the Academy, and it's going to be transformational, not only for your business, but for yourself. It's time for all of us to figure out how to tap into our self motivation. And just like Mel says, make sure that we do the things simply because we said we would.